Hi Math 6-5. This is lesson 110, which is located on page 569 of your textbook and is scheduled for Thursday, April 9th. This lesson is going to be very similar to what you just learned in lesson 109 with multiplying decimals. The concepts that you learned there with counting the decimal places and all of that will transfer to this lesson, and then it'll add another little step in. So this one, it should be pretty simple once you get the new step down. Okay, so let's look at some examples together. So we have, let me make sure I'm on screen good. Okay, so in our first example, we have the numbers 3/100ths times 3/10ths. So we multiplied decimals on the previous lesson, so we are good with that. So let's look at setting that up vertically, because that's always the easiest way to work with these. And remembering that since I'm multiplying decimals, I don't have to line up my decimals. If I was adding, I would. So I'm going to say 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 0 is 0, and 3 times 0 is 0. Okay, so then I'm going to, I can put my next row of zeros too. So I did 0 as a placeholder, then 0 times 3, 0 times 0, 0 times 0. Okay, and bring that down there. Okay, now I need to determine how many decimal places do I need in my answer. So here, to the right of the decimal, I have 2 digits. So I have 2 decimal places there. And here, to the right of the answer, I have 1 digit. So I have 1 decimal place there. So that is a total of 3. So I bring in my decimal from here. I go 1, 2, 3, and my answer is 9 thousandths. Okay? Same thing we did in 110, but it does change. Okay, let's look at our next example here. So now I have 12/100ths, times 11. Okay, so I am going to go through and multiply. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 0 is 0. Placeholder 0. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 0 is 0. Now I could put in my rows of zeros if I needed to, but because I'm running out of space, I'm not going to, and it's not going to affect my answer. So 2 plus 0 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, and there is 1. Okay? Now, when I look at, I have to determine, here's my answer, and I have to determine how many decimal places I need. So to the right of 0, I have 2 decimal places there. And then my number here, to the right of 0, I have 2 there. So I need a total of 4 decimal places. Okay, so I look to my answer, and this is where the new part comes in that is different from, it's an addition to lesson 109. So if I need 4 total, and I look and I only have 3 digits to work with. So what I have to do is move my decimal 1, 2, 3, 4 places. Now notice I don't have a digit here, and that's okay. I'm going to fill that in with a 0. So I will end up with 4 decimal places. So let me write that number out to the side so you can see clearly what I did. So because it's a partial number, I put my 0 before the decimal point. And then I have 4 decimal places to the right, and they are 0, 1, 3, 2. Okay, so I moved it in 4 places because that was what was required. That's how many original decimal places I had. And I have to have as many decimal places in my answer as I had in my original problem. So I had to fill it in with a 0. And that is my answer. So this is, if I was going to say it in words, 132 10,000ths. Remember just a few lessons ago, we worked with place value up to the 10,000ths. So that is how you'd say that number. So let's move on to another example. So we have, let's see, I'll bring my paper all the way up here, make sure y'all can see everything. Okay, so I have, go back to a different color, so 4/100ths times 2/100ths. Now, this one I can look at immediately and say, oh, I could do this mentally. Okay, but I'm going to just go through. If you can do this mentally, what you would do is you would disregard those decimals for now and look at it as 2 whole numbers, as 4 times 2. Okay, so I'm going to do it both ways. Let me go through the long way first, and then I'll go through the mental way. Okay, 4 times 2 is 8. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. Okay? So I'm going to just I know my next row, because I'm doing all zeros, is going to be zeros. Because I'm doing 0 times 4, 0 times 0, 0 times 0. So I'm not going to write those down. And then I'd have 0 times 4, 0 times 0, 0 times 0. So that'll be all zeros too. So I know that I'm going to end up at the bottom of it with 008 as my final. Okay? So let me go ahead and work it out just to make sure. Okay, so this is my first line. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 0, 0. 2 times 0, 0. Let me work it just to make sure. I'd rather overdo it and y'all be sitting there going, oh, Miss Mogler, what are you doing? So I'll do my placeholder 0. 0 times 4 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. 2 placeholder zeros. 0 times 4 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. Okay? So I overworked it for you so that I didn't want anybody to get lost as to where I was going. So my answer at the end of all of the zeros still was back to that original line. I could have stopped there, and you're welcome to. So I have 8008. Now I have to go back to my original problem and determine how many decimal places do I need. So I have, to the right of the decimal here, I have 2 digits, and to the right of the decimal here, I have 2 digits. And so that is a total of 4. So I'm going to come down and start my decimal here and say 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's where my decimal will end up. I will fill in with a 0 there. So my final number will look like, because it's there, and then I need 1, 2, 3, 8. So my final number is 8 10,000ths. Okay, so the only thing I'm doing different is I'm having to sometimes add in a 0 right here in the front to make it match up with how many how many decimal places I need to match up with how many decimal places I had in my original problem. Because the number of decimal places in your original problem should equal the number of decimal places in your original multiplication problem. That's the key, multiplication here. Should end up being the same as the number of decimal places you have in your answer for multiplying decimals. This does not apply necessarily with addition and subtraction, but with multiplying it does. Okay, and you also don't have to line them up, which is kind of fun. Okay, let's look at the practice problems. They are on page 570 in your book, and there are practice problems like the ones we've been working. If you can do a practice problem mentally, like, oh, I forgot to do the mental part of that. Let me come back to that. I was going to show you the mental way to work this. Let me come back to that problem and make it really fast on the mental side. So this problem is what I'm working again. If I'm going to do it mentally, in my head, I'm gonna not think of those decimal points, and I'm gonna think 4 times 2. That's what I'm thinking, okay? And when I do that, I get 8. So I can write down my answer of 8. And then I have to look at my original problem, and I still have to determine the number of decimal places, which I know to the right of the decimal here is 2, and to the right of the decimal here is 2, so I have to have 4. Well, right now, with 8 being my answer, my decimal's here. So I need it to move forward 1, 2, 3, 4 places, and then I fill that in with zeros. So my final number will look like 0, and then here's my decimal. I just put a 0 in front of it. And then 1, 2, 3, 8. Okay? That's the mental way to do it. You do not have to do it mentally. If this confuses you, please don't do it. I'm doing this because I know there's a few of you who will think this is the coolest thing ever to do it that fast. So I'm okay with it. If this is the coolest thing ever to do it that fast and you can do it, go for it. But if not, please take your time and work it out this way, okay? So your practice problems, like I said, are on page 570. They're set up the same identical way as lesson 109. If you look at them, they have all the multiplication ones going through here, and then they have the area of a rectangle, just like you did on 109, the area of that square. So it'll be set up very, very similar. If you have any questions or anything, have your parents get in contact with me. I hope you're all doing well. And remember, your homework for this week is due on Monday, April 13th. Bye, guys.